Hey, thanks for tuning in. In this video, I'm going to talk about Torah only or Torah as the foundation. If you've been watching my videos, you're probably aware that we need to return to the written Torah, that we need to pay attention to what the Torah says and seek to implement it and learn it through the Torah, learn the Torah through the Torah. And knowing that, however, there are sometimes misinterpretations that come up. Like the idea that this must be Torah only, or that we're advocating for a complete rejection of all prophecy, or something along those lines. Which is not actually the case. It's kind of an incomplete description of what's going on. Because the Torah itself says that there are going to be prophets, such as in Numbers 12:6, where it says, "If prophet of you shall be, I, Yahuwah, shall make myself known to him in vision. I shall speak in him in dream." Or like it says in Deuteronomy 18:15, "Prophet from your midst, from your brothers, like me, Yahuwah your Elohim shall cause to rise for you." So clearly, focusing on the Torah does not mean the rejection of all prophecy or anything of that sort, because the Torah itself tells us that there are prophets outside of Moses, and that we are to expect future prophets to be legitimately raised up. Now, that being said, focusing on the Torah does imply a different view of Scripture than is traditionally taken in many groups. In looking at this, I'm going to refer to three categories: the law, prophecy, and writings. You might recognize some similarities with Rabbinic Judaism, their acronym TNK for the Tanakh. I am not actually referring to their definitions, but I do think that this structure is a useful way of looking at it and sorting this out. So in referring to these categories, it's likely that it will not match the exact Rabbinic way of looking at it. As you will see, this differs from the way that many belief systems treat the idea of Scripture. For example, there are a number of Karaite belief systems as well as Christian belief systems that suggest no difference between these categories. That the fact that one book was included alongside all of these other books in what they personally consider to be Scripture means that it should be treated exactly the same way as everything else. But is this really what is expected of us? Let's consider the issue of writings first. This category of writings could be considered a catch-all for anything that is not Torah and anything that is not prophecy. So in considering this category, it might include writings about history, it could be personal accounts, personal journals and diaries, songs, poems, teachings on wisdom, or even theological teachings or teachings about the law or teachings about prophecy. But it itself is not considered inspired or a prophecy. The author of the writing is not saying that this is coming from Elohim or coming from some other Elohim for that matter. He is not saying it is law. He is not saying it is prophecy. It could be teachings about it or something of that sort, or it may be just completely irrelevant about something else altogether. It is not prophecy. It is not law. It is just a writing. So since it is not prophecy, we're not going to be concerned with testing it by the prophet's test or making sure that it follows the laws of prophecy, because it's not claiming to be a prophecy. Likewise, if it's not claiming to be Torah, if it's not claiming to be the law of Moses, then there's no reason to consider it as the law of Elohim for that matter. Now, once again, it could talk about those things, but there's a difference between talking about theological issues, talking about Torah, talking about prophecy, and claiming to be giving such a thing. So some examples of this might include Song of Songs. This is not claiming to be law, it's not claiming to be prophecy. It doesn't claim to be inspired. However, it has been included alongside other books that are considered law and that are considered prophecy, in addition to other writings as well. But just because it was included alongside those things does not automatically turn it into a prophecy. Now, some people after the fact might say that it's a prophecy, like some people suggest that every single word in the Calvinist 1646 Bible is automatically the word of Elohim. There are some belief systems that advocate for that. But just because they have that belief doesn't make Song of Solomon or the author of it claim that it is a prophecy, claim that it is inspired. It is just a writing. So we need to treat these writings as such. There is no expectation of them being 100% true or 100% false. They are just writings. So in considering this distinction, we need to start distinguishing between things that claim to be inspired and things that don't. Because there are a lot of books in these traditional Bible canons, these traditional assemblies of books, that do not claim to be inspired word or prophecy. So in making that distinction, in distinguishing between writings and law and prophets, what might we consider regarding law and prophets, the distinction between these? Because there is a distinction. We saw earlier that in Numbers 12:6, prophets are expected, because it says, "If prophet of you shall be, I, Yahuwah, shall make myself known to him in vision. I shall speak in him in dream." However, there is a distinction made between prophets in general and his servant Moses, as it says in the following verses. "Not so my servant Moses. In all of my house he is faithful. Mouth to mouth I shall speak in him, and visibly, and not in riddles." A distinction is being made here, because even though we might consider Moses to be a prophet, and it would be legitimate to do so, in this passage Elohim contrasts between prophets in general, "If prophet of you shall be," and his servant Moses. There is a distinction being made here. And this distinction continues elsewhere in the commands as well. We might consider Numbers 15:22 through 23, that refers to offerings that are being done in response to wrongdoing being done in error. "And that you shall err, and you shall not do all of these commandments which Yahuwah spoke to Moses, all which Yahuwah commanded to you in hand of Moses, from the day which Yahuwah commanded, and beyond to your generations." In giving the commandments regarding offerings and regarding wrongdoing, we have an implicit definition of wrongdoing in this case. Not doing all of these commandments which Yahuwah spoke to Moses. And it reiterates this, all which Yahuwah commanded to you in hand of Moses, from the day which Yahuwah commanded and beyond to your generations. So if wrongdoing is being defined as the violation of the commandments being given through Moses, there is a clear distinction here, a clear separation of these commands being given through Moses as opposed to anything else. And we might also look to Deuteronomy 12:32. "All of the word which I am commanding you, it you shall guard to do. You shall not add on it, and you shall not diminish from it." Moses is giving the commands that we are to guard, and these commands are to continue to exist without being changed, because it says that we are not allowed to add on it, and we are not allowed to diminish from it. Just as it also says in Deuteronomy 4:2, "You shall not add on the word which I am commanding you, and you shall not diminish from it, to guard commandments of Yahuwah your Elohim, which I am commanding you." The Torah sets itself apart from any other issue of prophecy. The commands being given through Moses are being treated as their own thing. They are defining for us what is right and wrong, what is good and right in the sight of Elohim. They are defining for us how it is that we are to act and how the society is to be, how the system of serving Elohim is supposed to work. These are the commandments being given through Moses, that Moses was the servant of Elohim, and that he is being treated differently from other prophets, and the Torah is being treated differently from other prophecy. Now, considering this, there is this distinction, a distinction between prophecy and the Torah, because the Torah is supposed to be the commands given through Moses, so we're not going to be looking for other prophets to come along and give further Torah. We're not going to open up the book of Psalms or Proverbs and say, well, look here, there's some kind of command here, and treat it as if it's Torah. That's not something that we would do because it wouldn't be one of the commands given through Moses. And it would cause us to add to the law or take away from the law. It would cause us to change these commands that Yahuwah gave through Moses, which is something that we are not allowed to do. The law is that which is coming through Moses. Now, of course, there are future prophets, both future false prophets that may be able to perform signs and wonders, according to Deuteronomy 13, 1 and 2, that just because someone's performing signs and wonders does not automatically mean that they're a true prophet, according to the Torah. There are going to be false prophets that come along, and there are also going to be true prophets that come along, like it describes in Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 22. However, we need to make the distinction. In recognizing that the Torah tells us how to deal with prophets and prophecy, it tells us what a prophet is allowed to do and not allowed to do, and it tells us about the issue of signs and wonders and all of those sorts of things. Prophecy is clearly subordinate to the Torah. The Torah, the law of Moses, is being set apart from prophecy in general. Since that is the case, we want to be making that distinction, the distinction between the Torah, the law of Moses, and prophets. And also we want to consider the distinction of writings, the catch-all for anything that's not falling into those categories. It's not claiming to be a prophecy, even if the author of such a writing is a prophet otherwise, if he is prophesied otherwise. Just because he has a writing does not make that writing prophetic. He may not claim that to be prophetic. It could be completely separate from that. It's just a writing. It's not claimed to be inspired. So we have this distinction between the law, prophecy, and writings. And we are using the Torah as our guide in interpreting this. We are filtering that information through the commands of the Torah. We are checking it against the Torah. And in making those distinctions, we are using the Torah as our focal point. We are making it our foundation. The foundation, the system that Elohim established for his people. Thanks for watching, and remember the commands. Shalom.